Faceless Woman. As a backstory, the women on my mother's side of the family have always seemed to be sensitive to the paranormal. My grandma has told me stories that terrify me to this day. My mother and grandmother can talk for hours about their paranormal experiences. As for me, I have had many throughout my life as well. The scariest I will describe to you. Now, my parents' house is in the country, and there isn't anything close by except for a small church kitty corner from their place on the other side of the road. The church is no longer used, and the small graveyard around it is very old. Most of the graves are from the early 1900s and even the late 1800s. They've had a lot of odd things happen in the house while I was young, and after I had moved. Nothing sinister or too aggressive, thankfully. I was in high school at the time, and had to be extremely early to meet my team at the school and head out of town for a tournament. It was about 4 a.m. when I rolled out of bed to shower and get ready. My bedroom is right next to the bathroom, and to the direct left is my parents' room. My brother's room is down the hallway, and his door is the end of the hall. It opens directly into his room. As I step out of my room, I see a figure at the end of the hallway. My brother's door is open, and it is in the doorway with its back to me. The figure is clearly human, and a woman. She had dark hair, and was wearing a silky-looking nightgown. Now my mother has dark brown hair, the same length, and wore a nightgown that looked exactly like the one I was seeing from behind. Now in hindsight, I realize that in the pitch-black house, it would have been extremely unlikely for me to see someone as clearly as I did. My first thought was in fear. I was confused as all hell because I thought I was seeing my mother standing in my brother's doorway. I took a few steps forward and called out to her, "Mom, what are you doing?" There was no response, and the figure didn't move, so I tried again. "Mom, what are you doing?" I was whispering, but not too loud of a whisper, because I didn't want to wake anyone up. I took another step forward as I addressed the figure the second time, so I was standing no more than 4 feet away from it, and directly beside the bathroom door. At first, I didn't think I was going to get an answer, so I stood there in silence for no more than 3 to 5 seconds, though it seemed like minutes, and was ready to walk up to my mom and touch her, thinking she was sleeping. Before I could do so, the figure slowly turned to peer at me over its shoulder. I was instantly paralyzed with fear. The entity had no face. It was just a solid, smooth blankness, where features should be. The skin was pale as moonlight, but framed by dark hair. Other than that movement, it didn't do anything else, but I sure did. Managing to recover my ability to move, I booked it sideways into the bathroom, flipped on the light, and screamed for my mom. She of course heard my terrified scream, and soon joined me in the bathroom to ask what was wrong. I explained it to her, and she seemed a little shocked by it as well. I didn't feel any bad feelings during the encounter, or even when it turned around. There was no malice either, so I don't think it was there to harm. Anyways, that's my most vivid and scary experience that I have never shared before. I love reading others' personal experiences with the supernatural. I would love it if you posted yours in the reply. The Shadow Man. My little brother had reported seeing a black figure of a man watching him sleep. But before you read this, I want you to know that my brother is not schizophrenic, nor has he ever been. I'm certain that what he saw was 100% real, but I just don't know what the black figure was. He called it the Shadow. I am sure I saw it once, but I may have been dreaming, so I'm not completely sure. But on with the story. Sometime around 2012, my family and I moved into this house in a fairly old neighborhood. The suburb was established sometime in the 1970s, but our house wasn't built until around 2008. We had moved in at the beginning of 2012. In 2013, when I was 10 and my little brother was 7, he had suddenly started having trouble getting to sleep. He didn't know why, but he just kept tossing and turning and felt really uneasy while trying to fall asleep. As the night progressed, it slowly started getting worse. One late Saturday morning, when I was in the living room watching TV, my little brother came to me and asked in a concerned voice if he could tell me something. I said yes, and he said, "A shadow was watching me last night." This confused and frightened me, but hearing this as a little kid, I didn't really know how to react, since my mind wasn't mature enough to understand everything. I asked him exactly what he meant by a shadow watching him. He explained to me that a mysterious black figure that resembled a tall man had walked into his room late at night and had started watching him while he was trying to fall asleep. It would have been at least 11 p.m. the time this would have happened, since my mom, dad, and myself would have been fast asleep before then. I didn't know if what my little brother had told me had actually happened or if he was joking around, so I brushed it off like it was nothing. Again, I was 10 years old at the time, so I didn't know how to react to something like this. About a week later, my brother came to see me again and said in a panicked voice, "Olivia, the shadow broke in last night." I was beginning to get a little concerned at this point. I asked him how it had broken in, and he said that after Dad had locked up last night, the shadow opened the back door and came in, even after my dad had just locked the door. We had one of those large glass sliding doors, so you can easily hear it being opened and closed. My little brother explained that after my mom and dad had gone to bed, he had heard the glass door being opened and closed, then heard footsteps in the kitchen. He heard the footsteps come closer and saw the figure slowly walking down the hallway to his bedroom. It walked into his room and stood about a foot or two away from the bed, just staring down at him. He called out to Mom, and since our parents' bedroom was next to his, my mom woke up easily and came to see what was wrong. She switched on the light, and the shadow instantly and mysteriously disappeared into the thin air as soon as the light filled the room. My little brother started telling my mom about the shadow, but I don't think she believed him at all too much, especially because when she came into the room, she saw no one standing beside his bed, and she went to go check on the back door, and it was locked, as if no one had come in to begin with. Nor was there a trail of footprints leading to my brother's room. She was beginning to worry and thought he might be seeing things that aren't real. Though, to make him feel better, she suggested it might be a guardian angel watching over him to make sure he's safe. What type of guardian angel would walk into a child's room in the middle of the night and eerily stare them down while they are trying to sleep? I was really starting to worry for my brother at this point. A few days later, he came to me about a dream he had about the shadow. He explained that it was very vivid, and the shadow man was by his bed staring at him. My little brother went to roll over, and he fell out of his bed. He said it started kicking him, and when he frantically climbed back into bed, it felt his skin tightening and his body becoming skinnier by the second. His limbs became very bony, and he lost all the muscle from them. He described that he felt he had shriveled up into a creature resembling an alien and died. Then he woke up, and the shadow man wasn't standing beside his bed. He ended up going to sleep shortly after, calming down from the nightmare. Some guardian angel, I thought to myself. I decided I had to do something before the thing hurt my little brother outside of his dreams. So that night, I decided to sleep at the other end of his bed and try to see the shadow man for myself. That night, he fell asleep quite easily now that I was there. But I stayed awake. I was trying to think of what that thing could be. My mom came up with the possibility that could be my nan, who passed away in 2011 and was watching over my little brother. But that didn't make any sense to me. All different questions flooded my mind. If it was indeed my nan, why the hell did it look like a 6-foot-tall man in the form of a black figure? How the hell would any ghost be able to move a heavy sliding door made from thick sheets of glass? How could the door have been opened if it was locked in the first place? My mind eventually grew tired of thinking, and I soon fell asleep. My memory is a little rusty on what happened after that, but I specifically remember waking up in the middle of the night, and I was laying on my side, facing the wall, or at least I think I woke up. I was in a weird state, where I couldn't tell if I was half asleep or half awake, or just dreaming. All I remember is that everything seemed very foggy and unclear. I slowly started to roll over the other way to get comfortable to fall asleep again, And that's when I saw it, the black silhouette of a skinny, unnatural-looking man just standing there, looking at me. It was the shadow that my brother had been talking about. It was real, and it was standing right there. It looked human, yet somehow so strange and disgustingly abnormal. But I didn't know why. It looked like a man, but at the same time, so non-human, and its limbs bent almost backwards. It was freakishly tall, 6'1" in height at least. Couldn't make out its face because the room was too dark. But the second I saw it, I panicked, immediately rolled over back to the wall, instantly falling asleep again. In the morning, my brother said he hadn't seen the shadow that night, but I did. At least I'm almost completely sure I did. The whole situation felt too faint to be real, yet too real to be a dream. The shadow didn't come back after that. Ever since I saw that thing, it never came back. My brother stopped telling me about it, and he eventually forgot about the shadow altogether. The scariest thing is, I didn't even know what it was. I'm assuming that when I saw that thing, I must have just been having a vivid dream, but I still don't know. If that shadow wasn't an apparition or mysterious creature, then that means that an actual man was somehow coming into our house and watching my brother sleep. But why would he do that? What did he want? It really bothers me that I couldn't distinguish what that shadow was. The figure looked so human, but too abnormal to be so. Perhaps it was a paranormal presence, since the neighborhood was about 40 years old at the time. It is probably currently almost 50 years old. At the end of 2014, I was more than grateful to move out of that old house. We used to live in a battered women's and children's center when I was young because my father was looking for us. This was the result of an ugly divorce, and the state of Alabama gave him custody, and then my mom took us to Washington. One night, I looked in the mirror and saw a hairy demon looking back at me. I screamed and cried and ran to my mom, who assured me it was just a normal mirror. But that night, a kind-looking man that I can only describe as a ghost appeared at the end of my bed. He was there all night, but gone when I woke up in the morning. Then, the next night, and the next night. He was there every night for 4 months. We never talked, and he never moved, just stood guard. Then one night, he woke me up from my sleep, and I'll never forget how surprised I was, because I'd never seen him move or talk. He said, "He's coming, get out now." So we packed up the car and left to a hotel for the night. The next morning, we went back to find someone had broken in and gone to room looking for someone. I never saw him again after that. This happened to me when I was 17. When I was still living at my childhood home, I was sneaking out late at night to meet some friends. I went through the back door of the house, and as I turned to face the door, I could just feel somebody watching me. I thought I was busted. I turned to look at who had caught me, and saw a totally monochrome figure. The hair was completely black, like blacker than black. Her face was like a static washed over, white and gray, and she was wearing a dress that was in between the two colors. No facial features, just the silhouette of a girl's young face looking at me. I reached for the door as fast as I could, and when I went to shut it, it closed very quickly on me. I bolted through my yard and onto the street, and couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed. I stayed at my friend's house that night. Soon after this happened, I was up late with my mom watching a movie. My dad had just passed away. We finished our movie and said goodnight after turning the TV, stereo receiver, and DVD player with all of their remotes off. After a short amount of time, I am jarred awake by the sound of static with the speakers cranked up on the TV with no input. My mom and I met in the hallway, surprised to see that we both had been awoken to an empty house. A few years ago when I was 23-ish and graduated from college, I finally told my family about the first occurrence. Before I'm able to finish my description of the ghost, she finishes it for me, telling me that her and her friend used to see a little girl in our backyard playing in a sundress. She said that she looked maybe 12. Our neighbor, who was the original owner, shared a story with us about the family that originally bought the house after it was built. It was a young family whose daughter passed away from leukemia. She would have been about the right age. Looking back, the girl wasn't scary or harmful. My sister had the same impression. I believe what we saw, and haven't seen anything like it since. I also want to say that my dog used to scare the crap out of me because he would randomly stare down the hallway to my sister's room and would growl with his hair on end. It would always freak me out, and I never connected the two until sometime after seeing the ghost or whatever it may have been. I've only ever told this to close friends because I'm always told it's just an active imagination, or that I'm just crazy. Back when I was 7 years old, I had a walk-in closet that faced directly in front of my bed. One night, as I was going to sleep, I see a light coming from the closet, so I assume I just left the light on, since I used to always change for bed in the closet. I had weird habits as a kid. As I was getting up from the bed, the door slowly cracked open. I decided to go underneath the safety of my sheets, and then I waited and waited and waited. Finally, I gathered enough courage to peek out from the safety of my sheets, and to this day, I still cannot find a word or idea that comes close to what I felt. I'll try to explain it though. Basically, imagine being so scared that you can't move, but you don't know why. Just sheer terror down your back. But at the same time, you're overwhelmed with the greatest sense of love, peace, and hope, to the point you want to uncontrollably cry from pure happiness and ecstasy. That's what I felt when I saw her. It was a woman that was dressed in a wedding gown, with a braided band around her head. She was overflowing with a silver aurora. Her eyes had this burning intensity, but were warm and gentle. She then spoke and said my name. Also, "Come with me." The voice was like the most beautifully terrifying thing in the world. It was like someone incarnated the act of a rattlesnake, lunging for the kill, into a voice. I just stared at her, and slowly the silver aurora and her faded away. I ended up crying all night and into the morning. I was actually really dehydrated after that. But the thing that scares me more than ever is that ever since that happened, every now and then, I'll hear that voice calling out my name out of nowhere. The encounter also saddens me because the experience was so intense that everything else in life seems dull compared to it. I've tried looking into whatever it was, but I've never found anything similar to my experience. If anybody knows anything similar, please let me know. Hey guys, Drybones here. Thanks for watching my videos. I know my uploads are rare, but I still love you guys. Leave a comment of a paranormal experience you had, and who knows, maybe you can end up in one of my future videos. Check out my last upload if you still haven't seen it yet. Alright guys, thanks. Oh yeah, and one last thing. Stay spooky, my friends.